for today's membership meeting. We're going to get started a few minutes late. Otherwise, we're going to be here most of the afternoon. So I'm Dave Anderson. I chair the GMC, and we're thrilled to be welcomed on the stage of the incredible Marcus Performing Arts Center, thanks to the generosity of GMC member Kevin Giglinto, President and CEO of the Marcus Center. Kevin, many thanks. I think he was back there. Yeah. This is actually really cool. When I first came in, I thought, okay, how are we going to do this? Like, how are we going to do like lunch? And Gil has offered to do a rendition of the Star Spangled Banner. No? Okay, yeah. No, just keep eating, Gil. That's fine. So, with a new year comes new changes at the GMC. In December, GMC President Joel Brennan, I think everybody knows, stepped away from the organization to run for governor of the great state of Wisconsin. We wish Joel all the best on his journey and appreciate his leadership, which positioned the organization for great things in 2026. We are fortunate that GMC member and longtime Milwaukee executive Christy Garcia Thomas has agreed to step in as interim president in Joel's absence. Christy joined the GMC when she first moved to Milwaukee 25 years ago as part of a former Emerging Leaders Initiative. Since then, she's joined the board, she's served as secretary, she's assisted with various strategic efforts during her tenure, and Christy most recently served as an executive at Advocate Health, the third largest health system in the country, now operating as Aurora Health Center, or Aurora Healthcare in our market. In her career, she has served as president of the United Performing Arts Fund and has held various executive roles in media. We're very excited about what Christy's leadership brings to the organization in 2026. And without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Christy. Christy, come on up.
Thank you, Dave, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here and for the warm welcome. The calls, the texts, the emails of support are very much appreciated and have really fueled my excitement for the upcoming year. I'm honored to be stepping into the role during such a pivotal moment in our community. The GMC has a long and respected history of bringing leaders together to strengthen the vibrancy of Milwaukee, and I'm committed to advancing that momentum with your help. My utmost priority is to all of you, our members, and to ensure that we collectively advance the strategy and mission of the GMC. Over the last 2 years, our membership engagement has increased over 30% at our membership meetings. And today is a prime example of that. I mean, we came into it in the weekend with 100, and then today another 30 RSVP'd. This is one of our largest gatherings that we've had, and it's a great way to start off the year. I really want to continue the growth by ensuring our meeting topics remain relevant and reflect the priorities and interests of our membership and are addressing the most pressing issues that our community faces, because I know when we all work together, we can tackle tough issues and make our place better. I've had the privilege of knowing many of you in the room, but I would like to introduce myself to some of you that I have not had the privilege of meeting yet. As Dave mentioned, I was recruited to Milwaukee by the Journal-Sentinel in 1998. And I served various executive positions with the Journal Communications Company. As I was being recruited to the company, I knew that I was making the right career choice, but wanted to make sure that Milwaukee was a city that offered me the things that I was looking for, both personally and at a social level. I was in my mid-20s and single at the time. One of the things that intrigued me about the city during my interview visits to Milwaukee was the vibrancy of the city. The company offered to take me to a Bucks game and to the Milwaukee Ballet during my interviews. Seeing all the people on the streets and how clean the city was and is made me feel safe and comfortable. and was a big part of the decision to accept the offer to come and work for Journal Communications. As I reflect on the legacy and work of the GMC, they played a critical role in helping recruit me to this city. It's because of the places that we're sitting in today, the topic that we're having today, that it helps be a piece of the puzzle that creates the vibrancy in our city. As Dave shared, my career from media to nonprofit and the arts to healthcare. My personal life also changed as I met my husband, Mark Thomas. We have 3 children and grandchildren and a dog named Zoe. Milwaukee has been my home for half of my life, and the other half I lived in Kansas. As a healthcare executive, I have navigated serious challenges like COVID, 2 M&A deals, and have been fortunate to create health and wellness opportunities for our community. Our city has so much to offer, and its greatest strength lies in the passion, dedication, and commitment of the GMC members who serve it. That shared sense of purpose deeply aligns with my own, making this opportunity both humbling and very inspiring. It is my honor to roll up my sleeves with you as we continue this vital work. I also want to take a moment to thank our very talented GMC team for making this transition so seamless and graceful. A great example of the talent is our very own Deshaun, has been nominated and received the Business Journal 40 Under 40 Award. Congratulations, Deshaun. I did share my new GMC email in the letter I sent out to all of you last week. Please use it. I know some of you already have. I look forward to hearing from all of you. Now, I would like to welcome all of our guests who have joined us today. You can see their names on the slide behind me. Thank you for joining us. We finished out the year strong, and I would like to take a moment to highlight some of the work and our ongoing work. Our first Milwaukee Appraiser Diversity Initiative wrapped up at the end of 2025 with 10 appraisers moving into the field hour portions of their training. The program was recently awarded $43,000 grant through Employ Milwaukee to support their field training of 2 members of the cohort. This grant runs through June 30th, 2026. The Anti-Displacement Fund is entering a critical moment. This year alone, the fund will support 86 longtime homeowners who are trying to remain in their homes in the midst of a rapidly rising property taxes. Over the past 2 years, the cost of providing the support has increased by 48%, driven by escalating assessment and tax burdens. If you have been considering a contribution, now is the moment when your support will have the greatest impact in helping families stay rooted in their neighborhoods. On the education front, we are continuing to advance the work of MPS Operations Review, focused on identifying practical improvements to how the district manages facilities, transportation, and core operations systems. We have a wonderful committee of GNC members and stakeholders participating in this work, and you can see their names on the screen. As we all know, tackling education is such a critical, important area for us, and so if you're interested in participating, please let us know. The more the merrier. This work is about ensuring resources are used efficiently so more dollars reach classrooms and support student success. GMC is playing a convening and advisory role, bringing private sector expertise to help MPS strengthen systems that have long constrained performance. On public safety, under the leadership of Dan Bader and Ernell Lucas, GMC has strengthened its public safety work by deepening cross-sector partnerships focused on prevention and system alignment. Looking ahead, GMC will further define how it can support and enhance existing work to reduce crime and better serve residents across the region. More recently, GMC has partnered with Gil Perry and Children's and Dr. Eve Hall and the Greater Milwaukee Urban League, violence prevention organizations, and Milwaukee Public Schools to improve school safety, recognizing it as both an education and public health priority. Which leads us to today's topic, advancing in sustainability for Milwaukee arts and culture institutions. It was a year ago that we gathered at the Milwaukee Youth Arts Center to discuss the findings from the Wisconsin Policy Forum's Curtain Time report, which provided a clear picture of the challenges facing the performing arts sector in Milwaukee and potential solutions to ensure its health and vitality moving forward. Since that meeting, activity within the sector has only increased. We have seen this activity with our own eyes in the examples like the new Public Art Museum and welcoming a new director to the Milwaukee Art Museum. Kim Sayet sends her regrets for missing today's meeting as she is in strategic planning sessions with her staff today. And we know there have been other meaningful conversations and convenings within the sector to discuss how to coordinate philanthropic gifts, evolve business models so that future generations can continue to enjoy these assets. There are still challenges that the arts and culture organization faces daily, but there are many successes that have paved a pathway for sustainability. We can have a hand in accelerating this momentum if we prioritize our place in this journey. To help us better understand the progress and the needs that will safeguard Milwaukee's cultural institutions, we have invited a group of leaders with a wealth of knowledge on the topic. Ellen Censky, President and CEO of the Milwaukee Public Museum, Christine Hojnacki, Executive Director of Imagine MKE, Jodi Gibson, President and CEO of the Zoological Society of Milwaukee, and Rob Hinken, Executive Director of Hertzfeld Foundation, and Kevin Giglinto, sorry about that, President and CEO of Marcus Performing Arts Center. To begin the conversation, Kevin will underscore the vital role that Milwaukee's arts and culture industry plays, including the economic impact, job creation, and its influence on tourism and education. Following Kevin's introduction, we will be joined by Ellen, Christine, and Jodi and Rob for a deeper discussion on the evolution of sustainability for not only their individual organizations, but the sector as a whole. Please welcome Kevin to the podium, and also, again, a round of applause for such a phenomenal opportunity to be on stage. I know that for many of you, it's the first time being on stage when most of us are seated in the auditorium, but quite remarkable to be here. So thank you, Kevin, and welcome. I don't see you coming forward. Oh, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Christine. Welcome, everyone, to the Marcus Performing Arts Center and the beautiful Eline Hall and the stage of Eline Hall. And I love the stage. I will tell you, Broadway shows love this stage too, because if you go to New York and you're on a stage there, it can be really crammed, not have the kind of backstage access that we have, not have the space to spread out here. So it is always a joy. And a little couple of bits of history. We had to blow out the back wall to get access to the stage when Phantom first toured because of the size of that show. And now it allows us to bring in any size show into this venue. And another a little Easter egg that Joe, who manages all of our lighting, shared with me. You see the gobos that are along those walls. They're both the color and the original design from the original designer who did the lighting for Hamilton. And with us having Hamilton next week, we thought that Hamilton theme should stay consistent throughout. So thank you for telling me that, Joe. It's a good news. So. A little bit about me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kevin Giglinto, and it's been 2.5 fantastic years that I've been here at the Marcus Performing Arts Center. Before that, I spent 6 years at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in DC as the Chief Strategy Officer and Senior Vice President for Marketing, and that is a conversation for another day with a lot of beer. Before that, I spent 16 years at the Chicago Symphony in this similar role. But I'm also delighted to be back in Milwaukee as a very proud Marquette alum. I know Chemo is in the house. I don't know where, there he is. Thank you, Marquette, for everything you gave me. I'm also extremely proud of coming back and seeing the incredibly rich and vibrant cultural scene that is here in Milwaukee. That doesn't happen without the support of folks like you in this room, and many people in the community who have really created the platform for those of us who are in the arts and cultural sector to do what we do. There is so much to do here, as I'm sure you can all attest to, and some might say that's a lot of competition. We think it's healthy competition, but also, and something we'll touch on today, is there's a lot of collaboration and partnership that goes on in the arts community here in Milwaukee. Also importantly, I'm celebrating 25 years in the arts, and I also, in that, spent 3 years as the board chair of a nonprofit technology company serving arts and culture all around the English-speaking world. And this conversation is taking place everywhere, right? It's not just unique to Milwaukee, trying to figure out how our arts and cultural community can thrive, and limited resources, and how we can make sure that we're doing the right thing to make sure our communities thrive. And that is part of what we'll talk about today. But also importantly, I went back one too many. Each and every one of the arts organizations all through this entire state have programs that focus on supporting and developing our youth. There are education programs like a student matinee you're seeing on the screen right there, where thousands of kids are engaged in art and performances, but there are also workshops and master classes and science experiments and teaching that's going on, because we're all involved in making sure that there's a transfer of that deep understanding that goes beyond the schools, and partnering with the schools is part of who we are and what we contribute to the community. But why is it keeps going forward too? No, get back, get back. No. Sorry. Together, in the state of Wisconsin, arts and cultural institutions represent a $12.4 billion industry, employing over 95,000 people. And I know these are some stats that have been tossed around in the past, and in that number are quite a few for-profit companies that support us and provide us the inputs that we need in order to deliver on what we do for the communities. And I say that because often if you just look at us individually, arts and cultural institutions, we feel like another small organization asking for money for support, trying to get audiences to build, but collectively the impact that we all have is truly important to this community, and it's about 3% of the state's economy, about a third of that coming from the Milwaukee area. So, before I begin a little bit more, I thought it'd be helpful to get a little bit of a history about the Marcus Performing Arts Center. We began in 1969. The construction began in 1966. And what's really important is that the Greater Milwaukee Committee had a very important role in bringing the Marcus Performing Arts Center, the PAC at the time, to life, as I know it did the current building for the Milwaukee Public Museum and so many other cultural institutions, because I think this body has always understood the broad impact that culture has on who we are as a community. We also are very proudly a war memorial, a living memorial. And that allows us to find a lot of ways to recognize those folks who have served, given their lives or their community, to support us who we are as a nation. A little bit more history. The artists that have been on this very stage where you are seated right now are pretty remarkable. You see Ray Charles there in 1973, but it has also graced the presence of Ella Fitzgerald, Johnny Cash, the Grateful Dead, and so many more. This stage is important because it brings these artists to this community and allows us to all be a part of what is happening nationally and internationally. And what we are very proud of is the breadth of what we do. From Broadway to ballet, we're also a home and a convener to important cultural celebrations, like 40 plus years of hosting the Martin Luther King Jr. birthday celebration that is coming up next week. And also, it's a place where many young people experience the arts for the first time. And it really does begin with 4 extraordinary resident companies. The Florentine Opera is Milwaukee's oldest arts organization, and it is really a contemporary opera company that is looking at unique ways to bring this art to life. And if you did not see their Bronzeville Bohème, you missed something special, because it took a classic opera and staged it through the eyes of our own community, our own Bronzeville. So I see Maggie right there. Bravo, Maggie. The Milwaukee Ballet is really, truly a treasure. It's the region's flagship ballet company, and they have superb education activities. But people still ask me if I saw Dracula, which if you did not see Dracula on this stage, you missed something special. And really, Michael Pink is a gifted artist that has been in this community and part of this community for so many years. Black Arts MKE brings to life so many voices from different art forms from across the Black community here in Milwaukee, and their Black Nativity is something that has become an annual tradition for the last 10 years and sells out on a regular basis. And then finally, First Stage Children's Theater, which is one of the nation's premier kids theaters, theater for young audiences. But it's not just the theater that they produce, which the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which was here last holiday, they produced here originally, and it's still touring many, many years later. But their kids programs, and we did a collaboration with them to bring to life the youth of Donald Driver and Dream Quickie Dream. And the kids who were in that story were telling us and doing these interviews and talking about how the program they went through with First Stage enabled them to change who they are as people, and it enabled them to be more social and interact with people and help them come out of their shells. And there's so many programs like that in this city that understand the importance where arts and culture really can add to a kid's creativity and spark their future. And of course, we are the home of Broadway here. And the Johnson Financial Broadway at the Marcus Center series has really been a fantastic anchor to who we are. We're celebrating 30 years of Broadway, and on this very stage in this year. We do have Hamilton next week, as I mentioned, but as we celebrate the country's 250th birthday as a nation, we thought it important to bring this important work of art to our city again, which, hurry and get your ticket if you haven't gotten it. There's some scraps left, so you should go. But there's been so much astounding demand for our Broadway series because of what it brings to this community that we've been able to grow our Broadway series, which is part of how we're having to really rethink our business model, who we are as an institution and as a business, and it contributes to how we can further develop ourselves as an institution. This map shows you audience density from this entire region by county. And obviously the darker colors mean more people served. And I can tell you my colleagues on the panel today have very, very similar maps. And obviously Milwaukee County is our #1 area of concentration of audience, Waukesha County #2. The county with the 3rd most patrons that we serve in this region is Cook County in Illinois. And that is a testament to not just us, but the other arts organizations in this city who are bringing people to this community. Half of our audience comes from outside Milwaukee County, which means tax revenue, it means hotel stays, it means restaurants and bars. And that is part of the equation of all of this. That's why this investment is truly important. And we take a lot of pride in the fact that we try to reflect the broad diversity that is Milwaukee. Our Culture Collective represents a lot of different voices from a lot of different backgrounds and is paramount to who we are as an institution. I talked about our education programs. We have a campus where we're bringing people here all summer long through partnerships and our own Rainbow Summer to make sure that people can experience the arts whether or not you have a ticket. All right, 300,000 visitors a year, 550 artists, $59 million of economic impact from this institution alone. And I know there's been a lot of news about us over the last year and a half, or at least certainly the time I've been here. The decline in county funding has been something that's been a hot topic. We all suffered from the pandemic, so I'm not by no means saying that we're the only ones who were challenged there. The Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra exited, and I do not bemoan them that choice. Trying to schedule one venue of this size with both Broadway and with an opera and with a ballet and with a symphony is a bit of a balancing act. So I applaud them on their move. And we have aging facilities, but they're aging facilities that have been cared for by investment from this organization and from the county, and that's important. But I want to say none of these things have really held us back from who we are and need to be. We've been able to increase Broadway shows and have our new cultural planning or programming, which really helped with our fundraising. We have more facility rentals and continued growth. And I want to talk about these things because as part of what we're going to talk about today is that all of the challenges that we face individually as arts organizations require us to look uniquely at ourselves and how we need to change. So this is a chart that shows county funding of operating support for the Marcus Performing Arts Center since 1999. But I want to say, this is not to bemoan that. The county has given us a lot of money over the years, and frankly, without county investment, the zoo, the public museum, ourselves, and so many cultural institutions exist because of that investment. This is our new reality because there are different priorities that the county has to face. And that is a reality we have to face so that we can adjust who we are and how we operate in order to accommodate that change, which you can see drops off to a 0 at the end of that. What we've been able to do, I learned from our team that before the 22 fiscal year, we had fewer than 50 donors. We really weren't raising money on an annual basis. I'm proud to say at the end of our fiscal 25, we had 1,490 donors. And while we are building off of a small base, this is part of how we build relationships with people that help people understand we're a nonprofit that does require contributions and how they can get involved to help us who we are. I mentioned the Broadway growth. Last year we sold over 95% of our tickets to Broadway. And that enables us to get more content, which meant more earned revenue. And what does that mean? Ultimately, we went from what was almost a $3 million deficit and 20% of our budget in 22 to this year being almost at a break even. Now, no CEO is going to tell you a $100,000 negative is a good thing. So there's a lot more work to do, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Because if you see on the right, there's a whole mix of things we've been doing outside of the contributed growth in Broadway. We've grown our facility rentals. We have a new food and beverage partner today who are showcasing themselves for all of you, should you need them. We have improved parking operations, and we're also negotiating every single contract to get the most that we can out of those contracts and have shared administrative services with some of our partners in the arts so that we can be more efficient, maybe save a little bit of money. A lot has been discussed about what the state can do. Can the state help? And it's important to recognize that the state has helped. And so we're all very familiar with a chart like this that shows, well, Wisconsin's really low on the map there for state funding. But if you look into these numbers, this is just the funding that has been appropriated for state arts agencies. So it is important to take that into context because there is spending outside of the state art agency budget that when we look at what the state can do, has to be considered. This chart shows us against our Midwestern neighbors. And again, I think it's really important that we look at the context of full investment in arts and culture as we look at how the state can help. And I have one plug. So one way the state can help, and maybe you all can help, we charge sales tax for every ticket admission. And that is not something I've ever had to do. And I will tell you, our neighbors in Minnesota, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana do not. There's a state tax, there's a sales tax exemption. And so imagine when we talk about accessibility and accessible pricing, that's almost an 8% markup. And if that money was able to be retained locally, the Performing Arts Center in Appleton, the ones in Wausau, everybody could keep that money, either retain the price that you're achieving, or maybe a little bit of a lower price, or different ways that we could attack it without having to add more additional dollars to the budget, except letting us keep those dollars. So in quick summary, success requires a wide array of approaches, and I hope that's coming across because that's what we're going to talk about. Because ultimately, it's a collection of creative choices that have to be made and are being made by the cultural institutions. And probably they will differ from organization to organization. There is no one silver bullet, and there is no one lever that we can pull. But there's a lot of levers that we all have to pull. But overall, I hope you see that cultural investment and the investment in arts and culture in our community is important economically and contributing to who we are as a society. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Henkin. I'm the Executive Director of the Hertzfeld Foundation. Many of you know me as the former president of the Wisconsin Policy Forum. Actually was the co-author of the report that Christy mentioned at the beginning, and it is my absolute pleasure to be moderating today's panel discussion. We know who everybody is. Feel free to give a small, very brief plug for your organization when you field your first question. But I want to start, and I'm the moderator, so I get to choose where to start, by talking about some of the challenges that philanthropy is facing and that the arts community is facing. I don't think it's any secret, and we have so many foundation and corporate leaders in the room, that we have an extremely generous philanthropic community that most would attest allows us to punch above our weight when it comes to our breadth and depth of arts and culture offerings in Milwaukee. That said, because of numerous challenges, it certainly appears, and the Curtain Time report actually showed this with numbers, that the philanthropic community is being asked to do more and more. So I want to get expert perspective from our panelists on what's going on in terms of your ability to generate funds from our very generous philanthropic sector. I want to start with Ellen and Kevin. Both of you are experiencing some of the real challenges faced by the sector as a whole in real time. You're both seeking to raise millions of dollars to either initiate or complete huge and vital capital improvements or projects. You have both confronted the need to wean yourselves from public dollars. And so, Ellen, let's start with you. You've been at this for several years, remarkable success. We all see the new museum building rising. It's beautiful. You've raised more than $200 million, but you still have a little ways to go. So I want to start by asking you for your perspective on the fundraising climate these days, particularly as it pertains to foundation and corporate sources.
Thank you, Rob. Plug, please give. This is an overwhelmingly generous community and state. And just a little bit about our donors. We've had to the campaign at this point more than 550 donors who've given to the campaign. And amazingly, 45 of them have given $1 million or more. To put that in perspective, MPM's been around a long time. Our first 140 years, we only had 5 donors who gave $1 million or more. So in the past 3 years, we've had 45. So that's incredible. And among them are foundations and corporations. Foundations like Hertzfeld Foundation, Kohl's, Greater Milwaukee Foundation, many of you in this room have been instrumental in helping us get off the ground in some of that first support to make sure that we could kick off this campaign. But foundations are challenged because as government funding declines, not just county funding, but also federal funding, foundations are being asked to step in and make up that difference. So it is a challenging time. For corporations, again, we are extremely grateful for the corporations like We Energies and Northwestern Mutual who again, were at the table just like the foundations in the beginning, they're continuing, both of them, to help us strategize on how to continue this campaign. But the one thing you should know about corporations is in the country, only 6% of all giving across the country comes from corporations. Luckily, we're punching a little bit above that in that right now we have 7% of our giving that comes from corporations. So it is challenging because especially in the climate that we're in. But we are so grateful to all of our partners in helping us to bring this new building to a fruition.
Thanks, Ellen. Let's turn to you now, Kevin. You are in the midst of considering some potential major improvements to this facility. I know that you've engaged some potential philanthropic funders. I'm wondering about your perspective. What are you hearing from those funders? And also, how much of a factor is it for you that there are so many major capital campaigns either in progress or in the quiet phase in our community?
I don't think there's a conversation that goes by with a potential funder where they don't mention all the other campaigns going on. So it's a reality that I'm very, very familiar with. I will say that, again, to echo what's been said across the board, it's a very generous community, and they're all trying to figure out a way to help. One of the very direct ways that I found from this, Rob, is that some donors are asking about how far they can extend payments, so a commitment that might go over more years than they're normally used to, or even delaying the start of cash distribution a number of years in order to give them the room to get out of a current campaign to move into ways to help us. So I'm grateful that they're being creative and trying to find solutions, and we're needing to be flexible in order to make our plans.
Great. Jodi, you are always in fundraising mode as the head of the Zoological Society. The Society's support, of course, is crucial to Milwaukee County's efforts to invest in the zoo's capital assets, including new exhibits like the recently unveiled new rhino and indoor hippo habitat. What is your sense of the capacity of our region's philanthropic community to continue to support the zoo's needs?
Yeah, well, I want to start by saying thank you, as my colleagues have, because I look around this room, this is an audience that is already giving. Almost every table I can see someone who's supported, whether it's my organization or Ellen's or Kevin's. So thank you for being here today and for leading by example. I also think many of you know in this room that the zoo is still owned and operated by Milwaukee County. So my role is a little bit different than Kevin's and Ellen's. I do not lead the zoo, but I lead the nonprofit charity partner that helps support the zoo. We are more than just a fundraising arm of the zoo, though. We run all of the education programs and we partner on conservation. So the county still plays a critical role in owning and operating the zoo itself. We recently made a $50+ million investment in new exhibits at the zoo. Half of that funding came from the county. The other half of that came from people like many of you who were making those large-scale gifts. And a couple of things that we've learned along the way and where we've had success is we have seen that if we have a clear vision, mission, and strategy of what we're going to do, people can get excited about it. They're investing in our ability to do that and get it done. So when we get projects done on time and on budget and don't have to go with our hands out again and say, oops, we need a little bit more to get this done, we are more likely to get the support that we need. Additionally, I would say we have always tried, as I know my colleagues have too, to manage this as a two-way street. It can't just be about the revenue we need, it needs to be about managing the expenses and having projects that are right for us to support, right-sizing our organizations. And when we recently announced a new strategic plan of all the exciting things we want to do in the future, we were also very open that that would mean letting go of some of the things we've done in the past. And I think that's an important part of the conversation to have, is about not only the dollars we need, but are we being responsible with their use? And I think we found that to be success. I would also say, as we completed this most recent capital campaign, we've learned that our donors might have more capacity to do more than we thought. So we've added to our fundraising staff to make sure that we are resourced to be able to go out and hopefully solicit and capture those dollars for the greater good of the zoo.
Thanks, Jodi. And you know, as I'm sitting here reflecting on the first three answers here, I mean, there's a lot to be excited about. And when you take a step back, and I see Chad Bauman here, look at all the wonderful investments that we have seen over the past few years, the Rep, of course, and their brand new theater complex, and again, seeing that museum building rising and seeing the great new exhibits at the zoo. But someone who can give a better perspective than me is Christine Hojnacki, the head of Imagine MKE. Perhaps more than anybody else in this community, Christine, you have a perspective across the sector, not just some of the big institutions, but the medium-sized and smaller ones. And so I'm wondering your perspective on the financial challenges facing the entire sector, both what keeps you up at night, but also what gives you encouragement.
Thank you, Rob, for that very large question. Well, first, let me just tell you a little bit about Imagine MKE, because a lot of you in the room may not be familiar with the organization, because we've only been around for 6 years. And the organization was founded because Milwaukee is for the city of its size, is the only city in the country that did not have a dedicated Office of Arts and Culture. So really no one championing the sector. And these are three of many, many organizations and many of you in the audience. So our role in the community is to advocate, to advance arts and culture, and to amplify the voices of artists and organizations, and really strengthen the vitality and the economic impact that arts and culture has on our community. There's so much information that has already been shared, but when I hear about capital campaigns, I don't go right to funding. I go right to, that's exciting, because when you hear there's a capital campaign, it means growth and innovation in our community. And if there's anything I want people to take away today, it's that arts and culture are a powerful economic driver. You heard Kevin show $12.4 million industry that's for-profit and nonprofit throughout the state. And it's bigger than beer, biotech, paper, and a number of other industries. And, you know, the arts and culture organizations are putting Milwaukee on a radar nationally. Going back to the Milwaukee Rep, the Associated Bank Theater Center was just featured in the New York Times. We are getting a lot of momentum with the new public museum. And I have to get used to calling it this, I want to say it, the Science and Nature and Culture, thank you, the Nature and Culture Museum of Wisconsin. And this is really exciting. We're attracting national talent to our arts organizations. They're coming here for a reason. They're making Milwaukee their home. Christy mentioned Kim Sajet, which was going to be joining us and wasn't able to today at the Milwaukee Art Museum, and Rajoy, who has just joined the Bronzeville Center for the Arts. So again, what I want people to understand is it is a powerful driver of the economy. Now, on the flip side, we do have funding challenges, and what you heard from three organizations is multiplied throughout the community. And it's fairly simple economics. What we see is that, let me state it so you clearly understand, is that philanthropy, such a generous room and a generous community. Essentially, philanthropy, of course, with some state and county funding, has really built what we have here today. However, philanthropy cannot keep pace and has not kept pace with inflation. And that, coupled with the capital campaigns that you're hearing about, endowment campaigns that we hear about, we're really we're really missing that third leg of the stool, which is public funding. And this is an issue not just in Milwaukee, it's an issue across the state. And this is the work that Imagine MKE is doing to change the narrative, to change the conversation from the issues, to get everybody to understand. I mean, we need the voices of the whole community to understand and educate everyone on really the impacts that arts and culture has for a vibrant community and driving the economy.
Thanks, Christine. So we've heard about some encouragement. We've heard about the funding challenges. I know the people in this room, the first response when we hear funding challenges is we often think, of course, about how can we generate more resources, but there's also another side of the coin, which is what do arts and culture institutions and organizations need to do to rethink business models and otherwise respond to the fiscal realities. So I want to start with you, Ellen. The Public Museum has been through all sorts of turmoil over the years, financial distress. You are obviously making big changes to your business model. So how have you responded, and give us a little bit of a flavor for what you're doing to respond to these challenging economic times?
When we started into the planning process for the new museum, one of the core tenets of that process was to keep sustainability at the center. As Rob said, we've been through the museum probably since the point when it became a nonprofit 35 years ago, and the county started slowly reducing our funds. We've struggled and had some real financial difficulties several times, which you all probably know about. So when we looked at that, we said, okay, what's the reason for those financial struggles? And many of them relate right back to that building, which is massive. It's a 450,000 square foot facility, way too big for what we can afford. Hard to staff something that's that size. Was built without moisture barrier, without insulation, has not been able to be maintained by the county because it is such a big building and they've got over 200 buildings that they have to maintain. So, and we created some of it by making these wonderful exhibits, but they're totally built in and hard to change. So what we did was we looked at, okay, with all of these challenges with the building, what are we going to do? And as Jodi mentioned earlier, we actually said we're going to right size this building. So our building is half the size of the current building. And part of that, most of that was because it's a much more sustainable. Though I will tell you that for exhibits, there's only 23% of the current building that are exhibits. In the new building, it's almost 50%. So the experience, while the footprint is smaller, the experience will be greater. We also, as part of our capital campaign, we know that endowment is critical. And rather than putting endowment in a different campaign or putting it at the end, we said, okay, if donors agree, we are going to take 18% of each gift and put it into the endowment. So our endowment is growing as we've been running this campaign. We don't have a parking garage currently. Anybody who comes in and pays to park, they're paying the city to park. In fact, when we comp members or donors, we pay the city to park. So we are building a 222 spot parking garage. That is income that we don't have today. That will be for our visitors, but it's also one block from Pfizer Forum. So we will capitalize, and I've loved to tell Peter Fagan that we're going to undercharge him by $1. So, and we've also not been unrealistic as we've been planning and we've been refining our pro forma for that new operations. We've said, okay, we're going to take the attendance up in the first 2 years and then we're bringing it right back down. And we are doing all kinds of work with partners to make sure that we are utilizing the resources that we have to the best extent. So sustainability has truly been at the core of what we're doing.
any of our other panelists want to comment on that question about what can and should arts and cultural organizations be doing to, again, respond to difficult challenges? And also, I want to bring in the issue of audience development. You know, we've talked about inflation and costs are going up. We've talked about philanthropy can't quite keep up with that rate of inflation. We know that public funding is flat at best. But we also have questions about your ability to sustain earned revenue. So I've thrown a lot out there. Let's start with you, Kevin, because again, you have faced this head on with Milwaukee County saying we need to eliminate our support. What have you done? And also maybe comment on what you're seeing in terms of your audiences here at the Marcus Center.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Well, and I mentioned earlier that, you know, we have a wide array of programming. And the reason we do that wide array of programming is we want everyone to see themselves here, right? Because we know that when artists from different backgrounds are on our stages, the audiences to whom they speak feel welcome and invited, and that's important. But as we look at economics, we try to find ways to make sure we're balancing that. So we have a certain amount of, I would say, high demand programming, and our ability to bring in that more Broadway gives us the kind of flexibility financially to do some of the other things while we're raising money for some of the other programming that is not going to be a commercial success, right? But our role as an arts institution is not that everything has to be 100% success. You cannot function as an arts institution serving your community and doing it that way. However, it's that balance. We used to talk about, when I was at the Kennedy Center, the bread basket. How big is the bread basket, right? Have a sense of what we can raise. We have a sense of what we could generate from earned income. We have a sense of the operation, but what's the right size of the operation? So if we have to contract out to do something that we may have in the past had a full-time staff member, we might do that. One of the things that we've been doing, which goes back to the early curtain time study, is with First Stage, we've been doing some shared services backstage. And that is like financial stuff. We've been talking about other ways that we could get together with IT so that we're sharing some of that, saving a little bit of money. You're not going to save a boatload of money that way, but you're going to save something and make yourself more efficient in doing that. We're exploring all of those avenues, but we need to make sure that we are seen as a place where all audiences see themselves coming here, so that when we're asking them to pay their money, they feel like it's not just out of the blue to take their money, that it's a relationship and that they're artists that they want in order to engage with.
Jodi, I want to bring you in. The zoo is unique, whereas both Ellen and Kevin were in county-owned facilities and relied on county operating assistance. The Milwaukee County Zoo is a county cultural institution. Of course, the society exists because in part of the need to have somebody else do some fundraising. But talk to us about your relationship with the county and zoo leaders. And the zoo has sort of been out of the news lately in terms of financial struggles, which is, I think, a good thing, but shed some light on that.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's a good thing. We are fortunate that despite some of the difficult challenges, County Executive David Crawley, as well as the supervisors, recognize all the things that we've talked about, the economic impact, the vitality of the zoo, what it means to the community. And to their credit, they're also committed to making sure that it's accessible and affordable for our families. That is definitely a top priority. So you see that in the zoo's admission pricing, as well as in the philanthropic programs run by the society that many of you support. We created in the past couple of years a fund, we call it our Access Milwaukee Zoo Fund, that essentially provides scholarship dollars or financial aid to make sure that all of the program offerings we have at the zoo can be available at free or reduced prices for those folks who may not be able to afford it. So we've really tried to address those issues that way. I also want to talk a little bit, as you mentioned, about our partnership. So to the outside world, it's just the zoo, and we like it that way. We hope people come and enjoy what happens, but behind the scenes, it is two organizations with different roles and responsibilities. And I would also share that without the private support, the Milwaukee County Zoo wouldn't be what it is today. And so we rely on those capital gifts. We rely on the philanthropic dollars. We actually run the membership program for the zoo. The society provides more than $5 million in annual operating support to the zoo. And then we also partner 50-50 on the capital projects as well. So we are absolutely critical to the quality of the overall guest experience at the zoo, and we really try to operate on a one-team mentality. And then I also just want to pick up on your audience question too, if I may, because so often the zoo is thought of, and our bread and butter is moms, dads, and kids, right? You came to the zoo as a child, you bring your children, you later bring your grandchildren. Well, as families start to make different choices, maybe having children later in life, we need to think about what are the program offerings that we have? Can we do more of a programming that's focused on adults? A couple years ago, we started a new event on Valentine's Day that's for couples. And we hope that people come out to the zoo and can celebrate Valentine's Day out at the zoo. So we are very attuned to those shifting demographics and looking to make sure that we have an appeal not only to moms, dads, and kids, but also as we go forward, you'll start to see much more programming that focuses on adults as well, or adult audiences.
So Christine, I want to turn to you again for a sector-wide perspective. So we're hearing about efforts being made to both change business models and enhance abilities to retain audiences and hopefully expand them. What are you seeing across the sector on both fronts?
And again, I think the issues that the three organizations are facing are happening across the sector. And really, it's different organizations have different things that they deal with. And trying to, what we want to do is bring the people together for these conversations so there can be a collaboration. And this is great idea learning. I am sure there's probably people in the audience kind of writing some of these things down now, and we're trying to take in that information, bring the people together for solutions. And I think solutions is how can we better work as a sector? We did a survey across Milwaukee, and with a number of organizations, different sizes, different arts and culture organizations, to just get a general sense of, are you collaborating? What are you doing? Are you doing shared services? And yes, organizations are collaborating. Are they all collaborating? No. But I think that is not because they don't want to, it's because it takes time. It takes time to bring people together. The convening of arts leaders and people in the community is so important in this sector because as you can tell, there's a lot of challenges and they continue to compound. And of course, taken from the Public Policy Forum Curtain Time survey, or a Curtain Time report that said share services is an opportunity. So I've taken that and reached out to these arts leaders that are doing it the best, our peer cities that are doing some incredible work in this space. There's some that are piloting shared services right now, and we're hoping to learn from that and bring it out to the market. And then there's I don't want to say this, organizations that are, there's shared services that work better for maybe organizations that have a higher revenue versus organizations that have, lesser staff and revenue. So nothing about the impact, but just we're learning that we've got to do the right thing for Milwaukee, and we need the data and understanding to be able to take action and change.
So let me look out to Christy and Dave. Do you want me to keep going? Should we break here for table Q&A, or how should we proceed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rob, you think I could just say, if we're going to break, could I just say one more thing because I do want to just talk about what's being done right now with arts and culture leaders. Imagine MKE started last June to convene the community on many of these issues. And we have had several sessions, over 60 people. So many of you are sitting here in the audience. Ellen was involved, Kevin was involved, Rob was involved, Nothing against you, Jodi. You probably just weren't able to attend. And it was funders, nonprofit arts and culture leaders, civic leaders, and part of the business community. And we talked about, and it was we brought the data to the individuals to help solve some of these problems that we're facing. And right now we are actively working on an action plan that is to address increased public funding, better coordinated philanthropy for the sector, and also ongoing and real-time data so that can inform decisions. So more to come on that, but I wanted to let you know that we're listening to these conversations multiplied by organizations all across the city. And it's not just a Milwaukee issue, it's a state issue. And we really need the help of the business community to understand. I do think sometimes there's a lack of understanding, as you can tell. Multiply this times, the data we have from 93 nonprofit organizations in Milwaukee is an impact of 330 million plus. This data is from 2022 from the AEP6 study that Imagine MKE led. And it's 16 million in state and local taxes that are paid from these nonprofit organizations. And again, that's 93 organizations. And so there's a lot of information to sift through.
Great. So we'll turn now to the table discussion portion of our program.
I'm going to ask that 2 tables, if I could get a table from this side and a table from that side, willing to share their thoughts to the questions. Deshaun and Langston have a mic. We'll bring you over the mic. 2 volunteers, please. Anyone? All right, thank you, thank you.
I'm doing this under duress. Hi, everybody. I just said I'm in a room of business leaders who don't want to hear from an arts leader that's not on stage. To be succinct as I can about it, number one, we keep talking about the sales tax issue and about state funding because there are huge real ways to impact the arts funding here. And they will continue to come up because they will impact every arts group, they will impact every culture group. And when you're looking at the sector as a whole, what we can do and what business leaders can help us do, it's figuring out a way for us to get buy-in and action on those 2 items. It's not sexy, it's not new, but they would work. So that's number one. And then number 2 is, and we've talked about this a little bit over time as well, but nonprofit leaders are business leaders, and we deal with a lot of the same issues that for-profit leaders do as well. It's just our business model doesn't work like yours. So the example I just gave is the Florentine's ticket sales are up 206% since 2019. Doesn't impact my bottom line at all. It's like a nice to have, it's putting some lipstick on. So when we talk about how are we increasing revenue, a lot of us are doing it. In fact, I'm sure the other arts leaders that are here can give you similar statistics, but they won't ultimately address how our businesses operate because that's not our entire function. And while I don't speak for museums or the zoo, I suspect there's some comparable data there as well. My 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have one other volunteer willing to, Shauna? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon. So our table had a conversation which I'm sure was very similar to other conversations that were taking place at various tables. And one of those questions that envision in the future is what makes Minnesota different than Wisconsin? Why do they get such a significantly larger level of public support than our art institutions in Wisconsin? So that's a really good question. And also, what is the profile of Cook County as a way to tap into that population more, to get more of those individuals connected to what's happening in the Metro Milwaukee area in arts. It's a very appealing opportunity, I think, for those folks who live in Chicago, who are overwhelmed by Chicago, I don't know, just trying to navigate the city, right? It's not easy to do. And how do we get more strategic in terms of making sure that we're collaborating across several businesses to take advantage of the Bucks, the Brewers, the Packers? Those conversations, which to us, seem to be important. Then also, how do we begin to develop that younger audience? As we all age, we want to make sure that we have people coming up who are young, who are also interested in supporting arts and culture. So tapping into our school system, churches, what have you, to make sure that we are developing that next audience. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think your point is very valid. As someone who used to spend 50% of my time working in the Chicago market, I can attest to the fact that it's much easier to navigate Milwaukee, and the quality and vibrancy of what we have to offer is nationally renowned and just as good as any other city our size or larger. The people that I've met in Chicago, many of them do come to Milwaukee, not only for the arts and entertainment. Summerfest is a big hit. Our airport, it's just easier. And so I think a really great idea to share. I know for me, when I was listening to the panelists, I was thinking about all the great memories that I have in so many of these institutions and more. You know, taking my daughter at 3 years old to the Nutcracker, being in the audience, watching the Nutcracker year after year after year, recently being at the zoo for a zoo class with my granddaughter now. I know all of you have those same experiences too, and we all are grateful for what this city has to offer in terms of culture and vibrancy. So I encourage you to continue to reflect on the discussion that was had today and consider how we can continue to support and elevate the impactful work for generations to come. I want to give another round of applause to our panelists and to Kevin and his team for hosting us. This was a great first meeting. I look forward to many, many more with all of you. Our next one is February 9th at United Way. Thank you to Amy Lindner and her team. And we're off and running. Thanks.